Today, we're diving into a topic that every app needs but often overlooks: loading animations. A great loading animation keeps your users engaged while your app processes data, making them feel like the wait is shorter. In this tutorial, we'll create a stunning custom loading animation in Flutter. Let's jump right in. To get started, create a new Flutter project. Open your project in your favorite editor. First, set up the main structure. Update your main.dart to look like this. We've created a basic material app pointing to a screen called Loading Animation Screen. Now, create a new file called loadinganimations.dart. Inside it, define the screen structure to set up the foundation. Next, let's build the custom loading animation widget. This is the exciting part, creating our custom loading animation. First, create stateful widget for our animation. Let's break this down. Inside initState method, which gets called when our widget is first created, we initialize the animation controller. We give it vsync property, which tells it how to synchronize with the Flutter framework's rendering ticks. We also set the duration to 2 seconds, which will control how long our animation loop lasts. Finally, we call the repeat method on the controller, which tells it to continuously play the animation in a loop. Now, in the dispose method, which gets called when our widget is removed from the screen, we have to clean up after ourselves. Here, we call dispose on our animation controller to release any resources it's holding. All right, the most exciting part, the build method. This is where we actually define how our widget looks and behaves. Here, we're using an AnimatedBuilder widget. This is a powerful tool that lets us rebuild a child widget whenever our animation controller's value changes. Inside AnimatedBuilder, we have builder function that takes 2 arguments, the context and a child widget. The child widget is the one we want to animate, and in our case, it's the output of our buildCircle method, which we'll get to in a moment. Now, the real magic happens within the builder function. We're using transform.rotate widget to rotate our child widget based on the value of our animation controller. The angle property takes the controller's value, multiplies it by 2 times pi, which is roughly 6.28, and sets that as the rotation angle. This will cause our child widget to spin continuously as the animation controller's value changes. Speaking of the child widget, let's look at the buildCircle method. This method simply creates a container with a width and height of 80. We set the decoration property to create a circular gradient with 2 shades of blue, one starting from the top left and transitioning to the bottom right. So, when you put it all together, this code creates a spinning blue circle animation that loops for 2 seconds. You can customize this further by playing with the colors, size, and even the type of animation used by replacing transform.rotate with something else like transform.scale for a scaling animation. Let's make this animation even more dynamic by adding a scaling effect. Update AnimatedBuilder block like this. Here's what's new. We've introduced transform.scale widget, which is wrapping our existing transform.rotate widget. This addition will create a pulsating effect along with the rotation. Here's how it works. The scale property in transform.scale is calculated using the animation controller's value. This expression creates a scaling factor that oscillates between 0.8 and 1.0 as the animation progresses. When the animation starts, the scale is 1.0, full size. As the animation progresses, the scale decreases to 0.8. Once the animation reaches its halfway point, the scale starts increasing back to 1.0. This cyclic scaling gives the pulsating effect. The transform.rotate widget, as we discussed earlier, continues to rotate the child widget. So, by combining these 2 transformations, we'll see a circular gradient that spins and pulsates simultaneously, creating a more dynamic and engaging loading animation. Remember, you can experiment with different scaling factors and animation durations to achieve various effects. You can also tweak the gradient to make the effect more vibrant. Try updating the gradient colors like this. And there you have it, your very own custom loading animation. Now, using this knowledge, you can improve the user experience in your live applications. Let's create another loading animation. This time we will create gradient loading animation. Let's dive in. Create a new file called gradientLoadingAnimation.dart and define a new class called GradientLoadingAnimation. This follows the same structure as our previous animation, extending stateful widget to manage its internal state. Inside initState, we initialize an animation controller with a duration of 4 seconds. This controller will control how the gradient shifts over time. In Dispose method, again we call Dispose on our animation controller. In Build method, we're using AnimatedBuilder again to rebuild the widget whenever the animation controller's value changes. Let's break this down. Inside Builder, we're using ShaderMask widget. This widget allows us to apply a shader, in this case a gradient, to a child widget. The shader callback function is where we define our gradient. We create linear gradient with 3 colors: colors.lightblue, colors.deeppurple, and colors.blueaccent. The key here is stops property. Stops define the positions where each color starts and ends within the gradient. By using the animation controller's value, we dynamically shift the positions of these stops. This creates a smooth, continuous transition of colors across the gradient as the animation progresses. Begin and end properties define the offset of the starting and ending points of the gradient. Finally, we use Create Shader to apply this gradient to the given rectangle. The child of the ShaderMask is the output of our Build Loading Shape method. This method creates the shape of the loading indicator, a simple white circle in this case. So, when you run this, you'll see a circle with a gradient that smoothly transitions across it, creating a visually appealing loading animation. This technique of using the animation controller's value to dynamically adjust gradient stops is a powerful way to create unique and engaging visual effects in your Flutter applications. Let's make the gradient even smoother by tweaking the stops. The clamp ensures the stops remain between 0 and 1, preventing glitches at the edges. You can also change the shape of the loading animation. For example, if you want a rectangle update build loading shape function, try experimenting with different shapes and gradients to make the animation unique to your app. And that's it. You've just created a beautiful, dynamic gradient loading animation in Flutter. If you guys enjoyed this video, you are going to love other Flutter animation videos on my channel. Until next time, happy coding!